You've been told this your whole life. Save your money. Don't spend too much. Put something aside for the future. And on the surface, that advice sounds smart, responsible, safe. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one tells you. Saving money alone will not make you wealthy. Let that sink in. Because if saving was enough, then every person who avoids spending, every person who skips coffee, every person who carefully budgets every dollar would already be rich. But they're not. In fact, many people who are extremely good at saving are still stuck in the same financial position year after year. So what's going on? The problem is not saving itself. Saving is important. It's necessary. It gives you security. It gives you breathing room. But saving is only step one, not the final destination. Because money sitting still doesn't grow. Think about it. If you keep your money in a basic account, doing nothing, it might feel safe. But every single day, inflation is silently eating away at its value. Prices go up. Living costs rise. Your money stays the same. Which means in reality, you're losing purchasing power. You're working hard, sacrificing, holding back, and yet your money is slowly becoming worth less. That's not wealth. That's survival. And survival is not the goal. Wealth is about growth. Wealth is about freedom. Wealth is about having your money work for you, instead of you working for money forever. But most people never make that shift. They stay trapped in what I call the saving mindset. This mindset says, hold on to everything. Don't take risks. Play it safe. And while that might protect you from losses, it also blocks you from opportunities. Because every wealthy person understands one powerful truth. Money must move to multiply. Let me say that again. Money must move to multiply. If your money is not being used, invested, or leveraged, it's not growing. And if it's not growing, you're stuck. Now, this doesn't mean you should go out and spend recklessly. It doesn't mean you should gamble your money or chase quick wins. That's not what this is about. This is about understanding the difference between saving and building wealth. Saving protects money, but investing grows it. Saving keeps you safe, but investing creates opportunity. Saving is defensive, but wealth building is strategic. And most people never learn how to make that transition. Why? Because fear holds them back. Fear of losing money. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of the unknown. So they stay comfortable. They keep saving and waiting for the right time, waiting until they feel ready, waiting until they have enough. But here's the reality. There is no perfect time. And if you wait forever, you'll stay exactly where you are. Meanwhile, the people who take action, even imperfect action, are moving ahead. They're learning. They're growing. They're building assets. And that's the key word right there. Assets. Wealth is not built by saving money. Wealth is built by owning assets. Assets are things that put money into your pocket, not things that take money out. And this is where most people get it wrong. They save money just to spend it on liabilities. Bigger houses they can't afford. Cars that lose value the moment they drive them. Things that look impressive, but don't generate income. So even though they're saving, they're not progressing. They're stuck in a cycle. Earn, save, spend, repeat. And that cycle never leads to financial freedom. Because true wealth comes from breaking that cycle. It comes from shifting your focus. From thinking like a saver to thinking like an investor. From asking, how can I save more? To asking, how can I grow more? Because once you make that shift, everything changes. You stop seeing money as something to protect and start seeing it as a tool to build, a tool to create opportunities, a tool to buy back your time. And that's when you begin to step into a completely different financial reality. But here's the part most people don't want to hear. This requires responsibility. It requires learning. It requires stepping outside your comfort zone. Because building wealth is not passive. It's intentional. You have to educate yourself. Understand how money works. Learn about different ways to grow it. And most importantly, develop the mindset of someone who doesn't just save money, but multiplies it. Because at the end of the day, saving money might help you survive, but it will never help you escape. And if your goal is freedom, if your goal is to live life on your own terms, then saving alone is not enough. You need to evolve. You need to think bigger. You need to play a different game. Because the people who build wealth are not the ones who hold on to money the tightest. They're the ones who know how to make it grow. And once you understand that, you'll never look at money the same way again. Tell me when you're ready for the next part. If saving money was the answer, then time would make everyone rich. Think about it. Most people spend 30, 40, even 50 years working, earning, and saving whatever they can. They follow the rules. They avoid risks. They delay gratification. And yet, at the end of all those years, many are still worried about money, still dependent on a paycheck, still calculating expenses, still trading time for income. That's not freedom. That's a lifelong cycle. Because time alone doesn't create wealth, strategy does. And this is where the real shift begins. You have to stop thinking like someone who is trying to hold money and start thinking like someone who is trying to build money. There's a massive difference. When you focus only on saving, your mindset becomes limited. You start believing that wealth comes from cutting expenses, from doing less, from holding back. But there's a limit to how much you can save. You can skip coffee. You can cancel subscriptions. You can reduce spending. But at some point you hit a ceiling. You can't cut your way to wealth. Let that hit you. You cannot become wealthy by only reducing your lifestyle. Because wealth is not built by shrinking your life. It's built by expanding your income and multiplying your money. And that requires a completely different mindset. Instead of asking, how can I spend less? You start asking, how can I earn more? How can I grow what I already have? How can I make money work even when I'm not working? Those questions change everything. Because now, you're not playing defense anymore. You're playing offense. And offense is where wealth is created. Let's be real for a moment. Most people are stuck because their income is fixed. They rely on one source, a job. And no matter how much they save, they're limited by that one stream. If your income stays the same, your growth stays the same. That's why wealthy people don't depend on just one source of income. They build multiple streams. They understand that relying on a single paycheck is one of the biggest financial risks you can take. Because if that one source disappears, everything collapses. So instead of depending on one stream, they create many. And here's the powerful part. Not all income is created equal. There's active income, where you trade time for money. And then there's leveraged or passive income, where money works for you. Saving money doesn't create either of these, but investing in building assets does. This is why two people can earn the same salary and end up in completely different financial positions. One person saves everything but never invests. The other person saves, then uses that money to create opportunities. Years later, the first person still has savings. The second person has income-producing assets. One is stuck, the other is free. And it all comes down to what they did with their money. Because money is not just something you keep. It's something you deploy. It's a tool. And like any tool, its value depends on how you use it. If you leave a tool sitting on the ground, it does nothing. But if you use it strategically, it builds something powerful. Your money works the same way. And this is where most people hesitate. They say, what if I lose money? But the real question should be, what am I losing by not trying? Because doing nothing has a cost too. A hidden cost. The cost of missed opportunities. The cost of slow growth. The cost of staying stuck. And over time, that cost becomes massive. Now here's something important to understand. Building wealth is not about taking reckless risks. It's about taking calculated risks. There's a difference. Reckless risk is acting without knowledge. Calculated risk is acting with awareness. And the more you learn, the more confident you become. This is why education is so powerful. Not just traditional education, financial education, understanding how money grows, how investments work, how assets generate income. Because once you understand these things, fear starts to disappear. You stop seeing risk as something to avoid and start seeing it as something to manage. And that's when real growth begins. But here's another truth most people ignore. Comfort is expensive. Staying in your comfort zone might feel safe, but it keeps you small. It keeps you stuck in the same patterns, the same habits, the same results. Because growth only happens when you step into discomfort, when you try something new, when you challenge your current way of thinking. And yes, that can feel uncomfortable, but that discomfort is a sign of progress. It means you're expanding. It means you're evolving. It means you're moving closer to a life that most people only dream about. Because the reality is, wealth is not accidental. It's built intentionally, through decisions, through actions, through consistency, and most importantly, through the willingness to think differently, to question the old advice, to break away from the crowd. Because the crowd is not wealthy. The crowd is average. And if you follow average thinking, you'll get average results. But if you want more, you have to do more. You have to become more. You have to adopt the habits and mindset of people who actually build wealth. People who don't just save money, but multiply it. People who don't just work for money, but make money work for them. And this is where your journey truly begins. The moment you stop seeing saving as a goal and start seeing it as a foundation, the starting point, not the finish line. Because once you understand that, you unlock a completely new way of thinking, a way of thinking that leads to growth, to opportunity, to freedom. And in the next part, we're going to go deeper. We're going to break down exactly what kind of assets build real wealth and how you can start creating them, even if you're starting from zero. Tell me when you're ready. Now, let's get into the part that most people never truly understand. What actually builds wealth? Because once you realize that saving alone isn't enough, the next question becomes, okay, so what should I be doing instead? And the answer is simple in theory, but powerful in execution. You need to start building assets. Not just any assets, the right kind of assets. Because not everything that looks valuable actually puts money in your pocket. And this is where people get confused. They buy things thinking they're investments, but in reality, they're liabilities. Let's break that down in the simplest way possible. An asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. That's it. That's the difference. And once you understand this, your entire financial life starts to change. Because now, every time you spend money, you start asking a different question. Will this make me money or cost me money? Most people never ask that. They buy based on emotions, status, comfort, impression. They want to look successful before they actually are. So they spend money on things that feel good in the moment, but slowly drain them over time. A brand new car, expensive gadgets, luxury items. These things might look impressive, but they don't build wealth. They take from it. And this is one of the biggest traps people fall into. They increase their lifestyle without increasing their income. So no matter how much they earn, they're always stuck. Because more money coming in is matched by more money going out. That's not growth. That's a cycle. Now compare that to someone who thinks differently. Instead of spending first, they invest first. They take a portion of their money and put it into assets. Assets that generate income. Assets that grow over time. Assets that work even when they don't. And over time, those assets begin to compound. They start small, but they grow and grow and grow until eventually they become powerful enough to replace active income. That's when freedom starts to appear. But here's the thing. You don't need to be rich to start building assets. That's a myth. You don't need millions. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need to know everything. What you need is to start with what you have, where you are. Because the biggest mistake people make is waiting. Waiting until they have more money. Waiting until they feel ready. Waiting until everything is perfect. But perfection never comes. And while they wait, time passes, opportunities pass, growth is delayed. Meanwhile, someone else with less money, but more action, is moving ahead, learning, growing, building. Because in the world of wealth, action beats perfection every single time. Now let's talk about the types of assets that actually build wealth. Because not all assets are equal. Some grow slowly. Some generate cash flow. Some do both. And understanding this gives you power. One of the most common types of assets is income-generating assets. These are things that pay you regularly. They put money into your pocket consistently. For example, owning part of a business, investments that pay returns, digital products, online businesses. These assets create cash flow. Money comes in even when you're not actively working. That's powerful because now your income is no longer limited by your time. Then you have growth assets. These might not pay you immediately, but they increase in value over time. And when you sell them later, you gain the difference. This is where patience comes in, because wealth is not always instant. Sometimes it grows quietly in the background until one day it becomes significant. And then there are hybrid assets, assets that both grow in value and generate income. These are some of the most powerful wealth-building tools available because they give you the best of both worlds. Now here's something important. You don't need to master all of this at once. In fact, trying to do everything at once is a mistake. The key is to start simple. Focus on learning one path, one strategy, one way of growing your money, and build from there, because wealth is not built through random actions. It's built through focused effort, consistency, discipline, and patience. And yes, there will be mistakes. That's part of the process. But mistakes are not failures. They're lessons. Every successful person you see today has made mistakes, has lost money, has faced setbacks. But they didn't stop. They learned. They adjusted. They kept going. And that's what separates them from everyone else. Not luck, not talent, but persistence. Now, let's talk about one more thing that can completely change your financial future. Ownership. Because at the core of wealth is ownership. Owning assets. Owning systems. Owning things that produce value. Because when you own, you control. When you control, you benefit. And when you benefit consistently, you build wealth. But if you only work for money and never own anything, you're always dependent. Dependent on a job. Dependent on a paycheck. Dependent on someone else's system. And that's not freedom. Freedom comes when your income is not tied directly to your time. When money flows, whether you're working or not. And that only happens through ownership, through assets, through systems that work for you. And this is the shift you need to make. From consumer to creator. From spender to investor. From worker to owner. Because once you make that shift, everything changes. Your decisions change. Your priorities change. Your future changes. And slowly, step by step, you move closer to real wealth. Not just money in a bank, but true financial freedom. The kind of freedom where you choose how you live, how you spend your time, how you design your life. And in the final part, we're going to bring everything together. We're going to talk about the mindset, habits, and daily actions that separate those who stay stuck from those who actually become wealthy. So when you're ready, let's finish this. Now, everything comes down to this. The difference between people who stay stuck financially and those who actually become wealthy is not just money. It's mindset, it's habits, it's daily decisions. Because at the end of the day, wealth is not something you chase. It's something you build, step by step, decision by decision, day by day. And if you don't change the way you think and act around money, nothing else will change either. You can learn about assets. You can understand investing. You can know all the strategies in the world. But if your habits don't support growth, you'll always fall back into the same cycle. That's why this final piece is the most important, because this is where everything becomes real. Let's start with the first shift, delayed gratification. Most people struggle financially because they want results now. They want success fast. They want luxury immediately. They want to enjoy before they build. And that mindset destroys wealth, because wealth requires patience. It requires the ability to say, not now, but later. Instead of spending money to impress others, you invest it to improve your future. Instead of chasing short-term pleasure, you focus on long-term freedom. And yes, that's hard, because we live in a world that constantly pushes instant gratification. Social media shows you luxury. People around you spend freely. Everything tells you to enjoy now. But the truth is, most of that is an illusion. Many people who look rich are not wealthy. They're just spending. They're financing a lifestyle they can't sustain. And if you follow that path, you'll end up in the same place. So you have to be different. You have to think long term, because wealth is built quietly. While others are spending, you're investing. While others are showing off, you're building. And over time, that difference becomes massive. Now, let's talk about the second shift. Consistency over intensity. A lot of people get excited in the beginning. They save aggressively. They invest for a short time. They feel motivated. But then they stop. They lose focus. They get distracted. They go back to old habits. And that's why they never see real results. Because wealth is not built through short bursts of effort. It's built through consistent action over time. Small steps, repeated daily. Even when you don't feel like it. Even when progress feels slow. Because consistency compounds. Just like money. And this is where discipline becomes your greatest asset. Not motivation. Motivation comes and goes. But discipline stays. Discipline is what keeps you going when things feel boring. When results are not visible yet. When others are doubting you. And if you can master discipline, you can build anything. Now here's another powerful shift. Stop trading time for money as your only strategy. There's nothing wrong with working a job, but if that's your only source of income, you're always limited, because time is limited. You only have 24 hours in a day, and if your income depends on your time, there's a cap on how much you can earn. That's why wealthy people focus on leverage. They find ways to earn beyond their time, through assets, through systems, through investments. They create income streams that don't require their constant presence. And that's what gives them freedom, because now they're not tied to a schedule. They're not dependent on a single paycheck. They have options, and options are the true definition of wealth. Now let's talk about something most people ignore: environment. Your environment shapes your thinking. The people you surround yourself with, the content you consume, the conversations you engage in, all of it influences your mindset. If you're surrounded by people who don't think about growth, who don't invest, who don't challenge themselves, then staying average becomes normal. But if you surround yourself with people who are building, learning, growing, then your standards rise. Your thinking expands. Your actions improve. And this doesn't mean you need to change your entire life overnight. It means being intentional, listening to the right ideas, following the right information, learning from people who are ahead of you, because exposure creates awareness, and awareness leads to change. Now, here's one of the most important truths of all. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to start. So many people delay their journey because they think, I don't know enough. I don't have enough money. I'll start later. But later turns into never. And perfection is just an excuse. Because nobody starts perfect. Everyone starts confused. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone learns along the way. The difference is, some people take action anyway. And those are the people who win. Because action creates clarity, not the other way around. Now let's bring everything together. Saving money is important. It gives you stability. It gives you control. But it's not the end goal. It's the foundation, the starting point. From there, you build, you invest, you create, you grow. You develop the mindset of someone who doesn't just protect money, but multiplies it. You focus on assets, on ownership, on creating income beyond your time. You practice discipline, consistency, patience. You think long-term. You act intentionally. And slowly, your life begins to change. Because wealth is not built overnight, but it is built for those who are willing to learn, to act, to stay consistent, and to think differently. And one day, you look back and realize that everything changed the moment you stopped believing that saving money was enough and started building something greater. Because true wealth is not about how much money you save. It's about how much freedom you create. Freedom to choose your life. Freedom to control your time. Freedom to live on your terms. And that is the ultimate goal. Now, the question is, what are you going to do next?